All right, so we're looking here at a junior college pitcher, 20 years old. His mechanics here. So he's actually a converted shortstop, trying to get into pitching as well. He's been up into the mid upper 80s. So trying to see what we can kind of see here mechanically to see how he can, break that 90 threshold and start throwing hard. So we'll go ahead and see his mechanics one time all the way through. We have the side and the back view. Run that back one more time. So, first thing I like that I noticed is just overall, he's very smooth with his delivery. Like you can tell this is a low intent day or lower intent day. Um, but he still keeps some pretty good mechanics. He gets deep into deep positions, has a nice aggressive stride, which is a lot of times not easy to do when you kind of slow it down. A lot of times you see kids trying to be an easier mound day and they just are just completely out of their mechanics because they're slowing down. So I like to see that he's able to, stay nice and easy and still get into deep positions. The first thing I noticed was how well he stays stacked on the backside and keeping, his weight back while still aggressively striding down the mound, starting his rotation at a good point there. You can see the knee and the hip is starting to rotate before the foot lands. Um, and then does a pretty good job blocking. And yeah, the flaws I see are going to be the angle of his hips at at pretty much at the point of rotation or at foot strike. Um, they're ever so slightly uphill, so we obviously want those to be downhill, matching the plane of the slope. So that's one thing that we can definitely clean up. I was long also with the arm position he's in, and that could get cleaned up with everything else mechanically and the rotation and the lower half stuff getting cleaned up a little bit. But you can see how low his arm is down here. Let me get it. So you can see here, elbow below the shoulder, and has to just be a little pushy in that motion there, in that start of that rotate or his arm action because of where his arm is. So we want to get that arm up a little bit higher and be able to be like more elastic and whippy with the arm rather than pushy, just because of that position he puts his arm in.
Yeah, and for him, I'd wonder if that's mostly just he's always thrown kind of on flat ground, hasn't spent a whole lot of time on the mound, and he just doesn't have that timing now that he has to buy that extra, quarter of a second or point 0.1 of a second as he's has like another 6 to 10 inches to get downhill there, and his timing just a little bit off that he can't rotate as efficiently out of that back position, and has to kind of push out of it. But yeah, I think he does a lot of things really well. He seems to get that back hip fully rotated. He's a guy that he takes that big external vertical shin angle on the backside, maybe too much vertical shin angle. Like that knee might be outside that ankle where it's hard for him to get downhill. But it's pretty straight up and down. Um, that I don't know that it's worth changing. Like there's a chance he has more rotation in the tank. We'd have to look at his full hip mobility, and see like he's getting through all that rotation and see if we externally rotate him a little bit more. Like, does it help him add another tick of velo? Um,
Yeah,
he controls it really well, which I think is pretty rare to see some of these young guys like figure out how to do that. But it must be how his anatomy plays best.
for sure. And I think another thing too, kind of regarding that and regarding the stack, which I know we were talking. That's I kind of what I was doing is I was over exaggerating, feeling stacked on the backside that I was creating that negative shin like right there. You can see it's just like straight up. It doesn't seem like it's an ideal position. Like I said, he does stay stacked really well, but I think you're right. It's tough to be able to rotate from there. I think if we create a little more drift for him, that could I think that would he wouldn't necessarily maybe not get as deep, and he more importantly, I don't think he would be able to get into that negative shin position there with his foot. His it would just more naturally the weight would bleed down the mound. I also think that a little drift could potentially uh, allow for his hips to be more downhill because it's going to force everything downhill a little quicker. We don't want to. I'm not saying to make him rush down the mound by any means. It's not what I'm saying, right? But he's a guy who's not a drifter, which is fine, but just creating a little drift. And again, like you said, from a converted shortstop, these guys don't ever throw on a slope. So it's going to take time to feel that difference. And it is a big difference throwing on a flat ground versus throwing on a slope. Um, but I do think creating a little bit more drift could definitely clean up the hips. Maybe, like I said, that stack in the back. I don't want him to get out of that, but I do think that negative shin angle, like you were talking about, where that knee is almost over the toes there. I don't think he would be able to get in that position if he is drifting a little bit downhill.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Like, I don't think either of us are going to say, hey, we want to drastically overhaul these mechanics. He does so many things well rotationally, but it's just that slight little negative shin angle where it might be forcing him to kind of go on that upward plane with the hips instead of him getting those hips downhill. And that might be his key to just like being way more fluid, is like just figuring out how to get those hips right on plane, matching the plane of the slope, and seeing if it lets him work downhill. And it's an experiment, like everything we do. Like, we have these ideas, we have to see if it translates to him to the mound. Does it make his stuff better? Does it make his command better? Does it make his velo better? um but I think it will, like, there's a chance that'll help him kind of clean up that little pushy arm action and kind of get him downhill, and
Yeah,
hopefully see a little uptick in velo. Like, adding 1 to 2 miles an hour for him is big. His goal, I mean, any JUCO guy, his goal is to add a little bit of velo, be able to transfer to a bigger time D1.
yeah. And I think he like if you look at the position that he's in here, if you're looking at I'm looking at the back, I was really looking at the side before, but if you're looking at like the back here, like his hips are almost fully clear here, or getting it probably not fully clear, but they're getting close to fully clear with that right hip kind of coming through.
Mm-hmm.
And his arm is way back here in that whippy position, which is good. We just want to get it up just up a little higher so he doesn't have to be pushy through that. But he does a great job at creating that shoulder hip to be able to be whippy. His just arms just not in the correct position to really allow that. So um, I think he's a guy who could, really really work on his craft and like I said, correct that little drift. See if we can get less of that negative stack with the shin, and then get those hips downhill. And I think he's a guy who could just see a click of a decent 3 to 5 mile an hour jump, even honestly, within a couple weeks, months time of really working on that. Just because he does so many things that high level throwers do, that he's just missing a couple pieces to put it all together. And the fact that he's a converted shortstop, to me, makes it even better, because it's not like he's been pitching his whole life and he's been trying to fix these things and he hasn't been able to. It's like, no, like this is his natural ability. He doesn't really necessarily know too much what he's doing. He's been pitching for a while. So if he's able to really understand that, I feel like those are things that click quicker for kids, because they're older and they're now learning pitching, versus it's different when you've been pitching since 12 years old and you have the same flaws in your mechanics for 4 or 5 years that you're trying to correct, versus when you've been pitching for, I don't know how long he's been pitching for, a couple months, maybe a year, whatever it is. Those mechanical adjustments become easier, I think, as you're a little older. And that's why a lot of times you hear these stories of guys in the big leagues. It's like, oh, he started pitching when he was 17 and now he throws 100. It's like
Yeah.
they allowed their body to develop and they figured it out kind of as they got older. It's not always the best case. I'm not saying don't start pitching until you're 17. It's not what I'm saying. But for this specific case, I think if he can understand how to move his body correctly, I think he could see a big jump in velo pretty quickly.
Yeah, wasn't DeGrom and Scherzer, they were both shortstops in college?
Yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
think DeGrom at Stetson, maybe.
Stetson. Yeah, Stetson.
Yeah. But yeah, it's these guys that are like, and I think it shows the importance of developing, and that's basically one of their philosophies here, is developing a athletic throwing base prior to
Yeah,
getting very mechanical with anything.
for
And so
sure.
it's, if you become too cognizant of these like perfect mechanics, and which has its an argument itself, like there's 100 ways that people throw 95 and make it to the big leagues. But if you kind of force these kids into, you're forcing them into what your idea of ideal mechanics are prior to them like developing that athletic base of throwing. um I think we're probably limiting kids more than we're helping them when we're giving them like these really strict pitching lessons of what mechanics are when they're 10, 11, 12 years old. There's probably an argument to be made that kids are better off just going out there and trying to pretend they're, let's O'Neal Cruz, for instance, or Ellie Dela
Yeah.
Cruz. I know those are the big ones the kids come in here trying to imitate. When I was growing up, it was, Derek Jeter throws, but like trying to find like that little base and let them kind of have fun and develop athletically with their throwing. And then once they kind of have that base, they're throwing hard, they have an idea of where the ball's going, they're pretty clean, then making these fine little mechanical adjustments.
Yeah. And I think another thing that I'm kind of seeing now with the arm path with him is because his arm is low and he gets that pushy kind of feel, he ends up like moving his trunk like very left to kind of clear the space for his arm to come through. And he's also, it's kind of hard to see here, although this ball does appear to have some arm side run to it, but looking at, like I said, it's not clear, but looking where the placement of his hand is, it looks like he's very much on the side of the baseball, um, almost like a cutter esque release. Again, it's not actually cutting. It looks like it does have some, maybe not, maybe a little bit of run, but again, I think that the arm slot too with the pushiness, I think you're going to see a lot of things, and outside of velo, um, I think he's going to see better, more true spin on his fastball, and better action on his fastball. I don't know what his metrics are, and again, we want to clean up his mechanics before we start worrying about pitch design and metrics and all that stuff. But I do think that with the cleaner arm action, is going to become more efficient fastballs. Whether he's throwing sinkers or four seams, more ride or more run or more sink, whatever it is, I just think he's going to be able to get more natural the movement that he wants on that pitch because of his arm action that he's kind of forcing his body and arm into positions you don't necessarily ideally want to be in. Solely looking at his arm action, like I said, we already talked about his lower half and what he needs to do there. I'm looking at that, and again, we don't focus, and we don't like to focus on arm action stuff because I think those come after everything else is clean. I think if you have perfect lower half mechanics and you're missing some arm action stuff and stuff still not clicking, okay, now let's look at the arm
Yeah.
actions, try to clean up and if those can click. But like I said, a lot of times if you clean up everything else, especially lower half and rotational wise, we see a lot of times that the arm action stuff kind of just will click itself into place. So again, with him, I'm not saying like we're working on arm action changes. That's not where we'd be at with him right now. But I do think that that is just an added plus that can come with cleaning everything up. That I think that he would get his arm into less of that having to move his trunk to the side, getting onto the side of the baseball. He could stay a little taller, more straight, and be able to get behind the baseball to be able to throw a true four seam or create some sink with his two seam if he's throwing two seams or sinkers.
Yeah. Interestingly, I think there is a study though that shows that lateral trunk lean is positively correlated with velo. I'd have to go
Okay.
find it. And I mean, take it with a grain of salt. I think it's just how you get into that position.
Yeah, I
I
mean
would,
that's not a bad position by any means. I'm just looking at it from the perspective of seeing him on the side of the ball and his
yeah,
trunk coming there, which maybe if he's not pushy, he still stays in that trunk position, kind of pushing laterally, and he's able to not be on the side of the ball and can kind of straighten his hand out a little bit more with the more natural arm action rather than
yeah.
that pushiness. So, um, yeah, for sure.
I would say the big thing is probably like, can we keep him on that plane? So if we're looking at adding velo, um, he's going to add velo over total rotation and taking that total rotation through that range of motion as fast as possible. Him keeping that arm on plane and not having to have that little elbow climb to get on plane late is all it's going to do is speed up his time through that total range of motion, which should speed up, obviously his trunk rotation will speed up everything, where he's forced to release the ball a little bit faster. Or maybe not forced to release the ball a little faster, but he'll have a little bit more power, a little bit coming
Yeah,
through the system as he's releasing that ball. Because it's really just like, it's a little bit of a timing thing of how fast can you get through a lot of range of motion to add velocity. And so, and you see it with those external rotation guys, like they're trying to get through a longer range of motion, as fast as possible. And it's no different than the guys that internally rotate, because that's what their anatomy prioritizes. Like they want to control as much range of motion as they can as fast as possible.
for sure.
But yeah, I wouldn't, just to reiterate there, I wouldn't rush the beginning of his delivery. The fast part of getting through that rotation is probably happening like as soon as he gets that front side down and getting aggressive after that front side down. Like he stays closed. It just front side down and can he rip through? Um,
Yep.
but yeah, I think does a lot of good things. Hopefully we can get him like help him control a little bit of an uptick in velo here to kind of reach his goals and transfer to one of these bigger time D1 schools.
Yeah, I think for him too, doing a lot of plyo stuff on a slope would be great for him. Just he needs to get on the slope more often and really be able to feel his direction and his hips specifically, kind of riding down the plane a little better, and then like you said, ripping at the end. So I think him just being on the slope more frequently, if he's truly trying to be a pitcher, that's what he's got to do. He's got to be on the slope more frequently. Plyo stuff. I would say even if freaking every day, feel something off the slope every day or 6 days a week if you're not throwing for one day, whether it's plyos or whether it's a touch and feel or a bullpen day, whatever it is, just get on the slope more frequently to just get more accustomed to how that feels going downhill.
Yeah, yeah, just it's a little flat groundy and pretty common from short guys that's had to make a throw from deep in the hole shortstop. Those hips have never had to get downhill on plane.
Yep.
But might be a pretty like fairly athletic kid. Might be a good way that he can just once he gets that feel, like it might just click for him, like you said earlier.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else we got here?
Um, I don't think so. Like I think we covered most of it. Overall, pretty clean. Add a little bit of
Yeah.
drift, a little bit of better shin angle at the beginning, and see if we can get the hips downhill. Hope that cleans the arm action. If not, we'll have to give him a little bit of arm action feel and see if he sees a big uptake. Could be fun.
Yep. For sure. All right. Cool. Sounds good.
All right.